Hey everyone, today we're working on a new street fixed gear build. This is a Cannondale Capo, which is basically like street geometry, but a track frame kind of. So this was painted up by the previous owner, so they stripped it and repainted it. These are my handlebars, stem and wheels on it though. I did like some mock-ups and stuff. So these do come with a front and rear brake mount, but we're just going to be running a front brake and it's going to be set up as a fixed gear. So this is kind of going to be sort of like an homage to the Cannondale track, but we're not going to be spending thousands of dollars on it. That's really cool. Something about this bike that I quite like is it can fit 28C tyres. The rear can actually fit a 32 or a little bit bigger. And then it has two bottle cage mounts, which is really handy. So we're just going to strip down the bike, take off the wheels and bit that I put on it just to mock it up. And then we'll go about repainting it. So the handlebars that I had mocked up on the bike are the Simworks cow bar. I had them on my Cannondale that I really liked. They have about 15 degrees of back sweep and a bit of rise and stuff, but the shape just really suits fixed gear bikes. I don't know what it is about them, but it's a really nice looking riser bar. It has like a little bit of back sweep, so it's a bit comfier than like a regular riser bar as well, but it's not too extreme, so it doesn't look like a cruiser bar. So these are the 32s stuffed in the back of here. So you can't slam the rear wheel with the 32 in it because it hits that brake bridge, just because of the height of the tire. But I think a 28 you could get quite slammed in there. That dog is not happy. I don't know if you can hear that in the background. We'll be using a 25C tyre in the rear because I have a gator skin that came off a parts bike, so we can burn through that. So the crank bolts came off nicely, so hopefully the rest of the crank comes off as well. Looks like the previous owner painted the cranks, so I'm guessing they would have had the cranks off to do that. It's always a little bit nerve-wracking taking off screw tape with cranks, those first few rotations. But I could see that the crank arm was moving off, so it's a good sign that they were going to pop off in the end. And sure enough, the non-drive side came off easily as well. And then the bottom bracket was almost loose, but that's just one of those things. I quite like going through other people's bikes, even if they built them up. You never know if they just did like a quick mock-up or anything like that, so it's good to go through bikes when you get them. So taking off the bottom bracket, that drive side was pretty well loose. Now we're going over taking off some of the other parts and stuff. So these are just some little skeletons screwed into the top tube of the bike. Just some little tiny screws, so we can just fill these holes up pretty easily. There shouldn't really be any structural damage, they're just tiny little holes. A lot smaller than what a bottle cage mount would be. Now, you know, in some of these newer bikes, you can see like top tube bags. So these holes are much smaller than that, so shouldn't really be an issue, I wouldn't think. A few of these had some little glue underneath, so just stripping that off. Now we're going to take the decals off. I'm just using a razor blade. These are just final cut letters, so should come off easily. The bike has been clear coated as well, so after we take these letters off, we're going to have to do some sanding to even out the finish. We could strip the whole bike down, but it looks like the clear coat has stuck quite well, so not really too much of a need to strip it all down again. We will be using an etch primer to smoothen things out. So I'm just using some 200, I think it was about 240 grit, to feather in some of the edges of the clear coat. From here, we need to wipe the frame down with some isopropyl alcohol and then use something to fill up those holes. I'm just using some JB Weld because it's the epoxy that I had. So you basically just mix that up. It's like a 2-part epoxy. It works really well. Use a bit of isopropyl alcohol to wipe the frame down first, and then we'll put that on. So just filling up those holes. It will sort of shrink a little bit as it dries, so keep that in mind, so build it up a little bit. But I do just wipe it smooth. Sort of makes the final sanding a bit easier. And those are the holes all filled. For paint prep, I'm going to be using some little spares and stuff to fill in all the threads. And holding the bike, I'm using a 25.4 curl stem in the seat tube. So it's a 27.2 seat post. So that 25 curl stem holds it nicely. We're using Montana paints, so this is their wash primer. Just filling in a little bit more of those holes with some of their primer. I did a couple of test passes on the fork and I don't know what happened, but it's got some gouges in it from the previous owner, or like some damage or something. So yeah, after the first pass on the frame though, it looks quite smooth. There's a few little patches where it's sort of dusted up, so it looks a little bit uneven. So we're just going to go over and scuff those. So I've let it dry for about 12 hours here, so the paint is nice and dry. I'm just going to smooth that off. This is basically sort of where it's powdered, like in the edges and stuff. So as you flick your wrist, it tends to sort of dry before it hits the frame, so that's why it's sort of powdered a little bit. So just going over and wiping those off. And then we'll go through and put another layer of primer down. This is basically just to fill in any parts that I may have sanded through. But generally, if it looks nice and smooth after the first coat of primer, just one coat is fine. This is their wash primer. Apparently it's an edge primer. So it should stick to raw frames and stuff a bit better than like a filler primer or something like that. So after that, it looked really smooth. Quite like this primer. The paint's going really well. And this is their metallic dark green. So it's 6035 is the paint number. This sprayed really nicely. As you can see, there's quite a bit of excess, but that happens with pretty much all spray paints. But it went on really smoothly. It's a really nice finish as well. Beautiful metallic flake to it. So I did a couple of coats and then I let this set overnight. Beautiful, beautiful colour. It's not as dark green as the Cannondale track, but it looks really nice. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? So for some reason the clear coat just completely hazed up. I don't know what the deal was, if it's the wrong primer or just the wrong temperature for it, because it's quite cold here at the moment. And that's why we do the non-drive side first. So we won't be using their clear coat, but as you can see, I sort of messed up the decal on the non-drive side. It should have been a little bit further towards the head tube of the bike. But yeah, that's pretty much why you do the non-drive side first. And also, I put it in line with the center tube of the frame, but as you can see, it looks too low. So on the drive side, I'll do it up a bit higher and closer to the head tube, and it should look a bit more even. So you've got to factor in perspective when you're putting decals on, even if you center it in the frame tube, because you'll be viewing it from the top a little bit most of the time, so just keep that in mind. Moving on to the drive side now, I just used a little bit of masking tape and spent a bit more time trying to get the positioning right. There was a little bit of a run on the seat tube here. You can sort of sand them out and then cover over with a little bit more colour, but I decided to leave this one here. There were a couple of runs on the top tube that I tidied up. So this was actually a run in the primer that I started to sand before it completely dried, and it just tore the paint up. So I had to redo the primer with a couple of different coats and just sand it lightly with some 800 grit, and eventually I smoothed it out quite nicely. But yeah, I decided to leave that seat tube on because I didn't want the same thing to happen again. So this is it after we smoothed it down, and then after this I just went over with another little coat of primer. Okay, I hate this part, but I also love this part once it's done. So I think so this is slightly higher than the center line of the tube, I think, because because otherwise it looks like it's tucked under too much because of the height and the construct of the letters. It just looks strange. It's slow. Okay, so center line is there. We need to go up a little bit, otherwise it's going to look stupid. So about there. The tube profile changes, so it's throwing me off. I don't like this. Because down here it changes diameter and is that right? Is that part? Okay, good, that wasn't the outside. Yeah, this profile here, like, okay, that looks good, okay. Okay, we can breathe. So now we've got the decal in the position that we want it to be. You need to work it from the inside out. I just used the backing paper of the decal. So these decals were from Retro Decals in the UK. This one is not vinyl cut letters, this is like printed one, screen printed or whatever. So it has a lot of clear outside. It might be hard to see, but here these are a couple of little tests that I did. So on the right, that's my usual clear coat, and on the left, that's the Montana clear coat. So you can see, well, it looks like a big grey box around the rest of the decal. It's clear on the right one, so we're going to use our normal clear coat. I don't know why it sort of reacted with the Montana clear, but I'm glad that I tested it. So it always pays to get like some extra decals. Once all the decals were on, I did 2 coats of my clear coat. So it looks really good. The factory fork though just looks terrible. So the previous owner painted it, and I tried to sort of sand it down to smoothen it out, but I didn't know how deep to go because it's a carbon fork, and I really didn't want to eat into the resin and stuff. So I just lightly did it. I could have used some filler and stuff to make it a bit more even, but I'm just not really happy with it. So I just did like one quick coat of the green, and just to see how it would show up, and it's quite ugly. So we've got another fork actually. This is a Columbus Tusk fork. I put it up for sale a little while ago and no one wanted it. I don't think I was asking much for it as well. It's quite a tidy fork. So this is a 45 offset, and the factory one was 43 going by the sticker on it. Same axle to crown dimension as well. I think there was like 2 or 3 millimeters in it, which is not much. Same crown race size and everything. 1/8 straight steerer, and it's quite long. It's not quite long enough to run like the factory headset spacer. So yeah, we need it to come as well as the Thompson stem that I want. So we are going to need a short extension. I ran a couple of extensions on previous bikes. You might have seen the Cannondale that I had that had the Velo Bikes extension. So to get that extension in, we just got to bash the star nut down. You can drill it out and take it out as well. But we didn't. Velo Bikes recommend to sort of epoxy it in if it's going to be permanent. You can still bash it out. They say it's like semi-permanent. I just used a little bit of JB Weld on some of the knurling surfaces, and that would sort of help prevent it from rattling loose, I guess, a little bit better. I guess you could use some Loctite on the actual bolt that holds it in as well. So to get it lined up, I used, this is a Netto stem, which have really good manufacturing quality and tolerances and stuff. So sort of use that to line up the adapter itself. Then you just want to lean on it while you tighten it up. So we have the Netto stem kind of snug fit, not completely tight, otherwise you won't be able to compress it down. And then just tighten up the extension. From here we want to double check it with the stem that we're actually going to use and make sure that it doesn't get hung up. So as you can see, it shifts over it nicely. So you do want to have the stem holding the actual steer tube a little bit as well, so you don't want the stem completely on the extension, otherwise it's just going to end up knocking itself out. And you will get some very expensive dentist bill. So yeah, but I've ran a couple of these on different bikes with really good results. One was an off-road bike, an off-road hardtail bike, and the other one was the fixed gear rigid thing on the street, and I didn't have any issues with either of them. Just periodically check it, I guess. So doing up the headset now. Unfortunately, I couldn't just run one spacer on the top. I didn't have a, like a 2mm spacer, so I had to use this one as well. So it looks a little bit goofy, but I'd rather run it this way than have the stem up a little bit higher. I just prefer a little bit extra stem on the actual steer tube. So the front brake we've got is a Paul E-lever going up to this 105 caliper. The front tyre is the one that I had on the Cannondale. This is a Gravel King 28C. The front wheel, I actually picked up these H+ Sun wheels off a Peugeot that was like $75. So really cool. Front hub is just a seal bearing generic one, but yeah, rims in really nice condition. We're just going to quickly hook up the front brake now, just so it's like all in place, and then eventually we can put the pads in and set it up properly. So to go with the silver brake lever and the silverish brake caliper, I think it's silverish, it's sort of silvery grey, I decided to use a grey brake cable as well. I think this sort of stands out less than black does. I was thinking of using white to go with the decals, but decided to go with grey, and I'm happy that I did. Just putting in the bottom bracket now. This is a GXP one to go along with our cranks. So GXP external. So the cranks that we've got are SRAM Omniums. I really like a decent quality crank, so Security 75 or the SRAM Omniums. A decent stiff track crankset on your fixed gear really changes the feel of the bike. So this is a 47 tooth chainring. I just use sort of whatever chainring. The rear wheel is the H+ Sun off that $75 Peugeot, and the rear hub is a Dura Ace track hub. So we really liked out on that. I didn't know what the rear hub was when I bought the bike, but glad that someone put a really nice hub on it. They didn't have a lock ring, but they did have front and rear brakes, so I'm guessing they weren't doing any skids on it or anything. We're going to service up the rear hub now. It did sound a little dry, so hopefully there's no internal damage or anything like that. These Dura Ace hubs are really good quality and tend to last a really long time, but obviously they've got no grease in them.
Yuck.
So disgusting here, but that's not really going to do anything to the insides of the hub, luckily. So we're just going to drop out the axle now and then use a magnet to get the ball bearings out. A nice little feature of this hub is that the little dust cap is plastic and it just sort of pulls out. I think it's plastic anyway, but you can see, just slots in and out quite nicely, but it stays in place. So you can clean the hub really well, rather than just sort of hoping that you've got all the old debris out and stuff. So throw some fresh grease in, we'll get all the bearings put in place. Once we've got all the bearings in, we can go through and pop the axle back through. This is just a waterproof bearing grease from Super Cheap Auto, I'm pretty sure. Use a couple of different types, but yeah, works really well. It's a nice viscosity. It feels quite like the Park Tool one, but it's not super expensive, so really good for this. It's tacky and like it stays in place, but it's not super tacky. So it works in headset bearings and stuff, but in headset bearings I would probably use something a little bit stickier if you have it. I tend to just use this bearing and this grease in most of my bearings though. Throwing on the cog and then the lock ring. We're just going to have this sort of loosely in place because we'll need to ride the bike to tighten the cog down properly. And then once the cog is tightened from riding it, we can tighten up that lock ring. So we'll put the wheel on and then we can go ahead and put the chain on. This is an Izumi NJS chain, funnily enough. I bought this from someone used, but it hasn't been used, like it was sitting in someone's parts bin for a long time, so I got a really good deal on it. It wasn't quite long enough for the chainring and stuff that I had, so we're going to put in 1 half link from a half link chain. I tend to have a couple of lengths of these half link chains sitting around, just so I can make up different chain lengths and stuff. It's kind of handy to have sitting around because you can dial in the chain length. That way you can get the wheel sitting pretty much exactly where you want in the dropout. I know technically re-pushing pins back through, because they sort of have a flare on them from factory to keep them in place. I haven't had any issues with pushing pins back through on 1/8 chains and up to like a 9 speed, but other than that I wouldn't reuse them on like 10 speed and stuff chains. But yeah, quite a cool chain. Being an NJS chain, it does have the screw through master link, so it has like one certain link that has like a thread in the side, and then on the other side of that it has this little nut that you do on to lock it all together. I don't know how secure that is, but one of my mates has used one for a couple of years, so shout out to Zane for reassuring me that it'll be fine. I guess if you just check it every now and then. I tend to take a spare quick link with me on rides anyway. And that's the chain. It's too tight there, and as you can see the tyre is smushed up against that brake bridge. So unfortunately we are going to have to put in an extra half link. That's super tempting just to file off that brake bridge or just to cut it out altogether. But yeah, we're going to do this the more proper way and just put another link in. It's a good thing about having those half link chains. So in hindsight, I could have just put in like 2 regular links, but yeah, we did it the roundabout way. Just throwing on a bottle cage now. I tend to run like a 1 litre bottle. I go through quite a lot of water. I kind of want to put a front rack on this as well, but I'm not entirely sure just yet. Most of my rides, I would just use like a little bag attached to the handlebar for like my phone and some tools and a little pump and stuff, and a spare tube. But yeah, with commuting and things, I think it's nice to have a front rack, so maybe at some point I'll put a front rack on this. Don't know how that'll work with this wheel and fork. Yeah. Anyway, put some front brake pads on the bike and then just cut the cable and stuff down to length. All works really well. Got a little bit of clearance over the front tyre, and that's the bike all done. We've got a charged spoon saddle on the bike, and I run Shimano SPD pedals on my street fixed gear bike. Sometimes I use straps as well. I used to really prefer pedal straps with flat pedals, but I started using SPD pedals for my cyclocross, like track lacrosse bike. So I had to use these sometimes. I still don't trust them though, so I might just put flat pedals with straps back on this at some point, but I just chuck these on for now. That's the bike all done. Really happy with the look of it. The green looks so good. And the handlebars and everything. Quite happy with how the fork and stuff suits the bike as well. We're going to take it out for a bit of a ride, and I'll tell you some of my thoughts and stuff a bit later. Thanks. There's the brake. And now we are safe from that crazy car traffic.
actually minty. So what do I think of the Cannondale Capo so far? Well, it's stiff as you get from most Cannondales. It's more practical than the Cannondale because it has 2 lots of bottle cage bosses, which is handy. And knowing that I'm not going to pedal strike or clip my toes is kind of a nice little added bonus of it. I don't really have an issue with it on the Cannondale. Like technically you can. Hey, cicada! Oh my gosh! Technically on the Cannondale, I could have clipped my toes from the toe overlap from the front wheel, but I think you sort of get used to positioning your feet in such a way, like if you're turning that much. And also, like the front of these shoes, it didn't really like grab the tire; it just sort of bumped it a little bit. We'll go around. I think 28s, especially with this front tire, 28s on this is fine for most of our roads and stuff. Gives you like a little bit of protection against potholes and stuff, but it's definitely stiff and bumpy. I have the front tire with like a little bit of squish in it, so that kind of helps. Won't be spinning much more than this on the regular. So we're limited to like 20 something, 30 k's an hour. Like cruising, we can push it a bit faster than that, but generally we don't. The bars, I really love these handlebars. I feel like these are a really good width with just a little bit of back sweep, so it makes them comfy.
So that's about all for today's video. This is basically like my run around street fixed gear bike. So ideally I would have something that's steel that can fit like a 35mm tire, but something that's not too expensive so I can still lock it up places and it doesn't matter too much if it gets nicked. So riding that Cannondale, it was just, I would have felt really bad if someone stole it or, you know, chucked their e-bike up against it or something like that because it was so tidy. But this one being resprayed and stuff, don't care too much about it. It is a really cool bike though. So if it gets stolen, I would obviously be a bit sad about it, but but it's a bit more replaceable than that like immaculate old OG mesh Cannondale that I had. So definitely a lot more usable, and having 2 bottle cage bosses, you know, things like that, a little bit more practical. So I'll keep an eye out for a steel frame that I can use, but I think for now I will just ride this and then maybe replace the fork, because that's about the only gripe I have with it. The fork's not as supple as I'd like it to be. But other than that, really happy with the paint. Oh, the green looks so good. In person, it looks really good on camera as well, but in person it looks amazing as well. Stoked with the wheels, got those for a bargain. And all the other parts that I had sitting around. And yeah, really happy with it. So I didn't really get any good wheelies with the bike. I didn't really try fixed gear wheelies on the street, you know, or on asphalt in general. But I did get 1 full pedal rotation, so that's some progress. On the squid, I've got like a few pedal rotations, so I feel like I could get some decent ones in time. But it's kind of nerve-wracking for me on concrete. But I shall try in the future. Also, I don't know if the Cannondale is the safest bike to try wheelies on and stuff, because it's a thin alloy frame. It does have a couple little dents in it, and you know, it's not the most immaculate thing anyway, but I don't really want to mess it up. So maybe I'll try that more with another steel frame, or just keep practicing on the squid. Thanks for checking the video out, and I'll see you again soon. I've got a specialized Tricross single speed that I'll do up as a fixed gear that has, it can fit like a 45C tire, but that's going to be like my off-road gravel kind of fixed gear. I don't know if I'm going to record that for YouTube yet. Let me know if you want to see that, but it's not going to be too crazy of a build, but yeah, I can do like a short video on that coming out soon. But otherwise, I've got a whole bunch of mountain bikes and stuff to build up as well. Thanks for checking the video, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.